Hello there everybody, how is it going and how have you been? I am EuclideanSqd, and we're back here in Duel Links to cover a brand new roaming duelist. Specifically, this is Inglorious Bastion. Now, mechanically speaking, he works pretty much identically to every other roaming duelist that has ever been in the game. Especially ones like Elegant Mai or Serious Chaz, wherein he is basically just a stronger version of a character that's already in the game. He has a completely different deck than what he normally does, or than what he normally uses, and he also gives out completely different reward cards to what he normally can drop. So this is a chance to get some new cards that are, again, only available this way. And without further ado, let's check out the deck that we'll be using to farm him. Now, I specifically picked this deck because, again, it's relatively cheap. You will notice there are quite a few super rares, admittedly, but this is definitely one of the cheaper ones I could find, and the main point of this deck is to create either Ojama Knight or Ojama King as quickly as possible. Ideally, before Bastion can get more than one monster on the field, but again, just as soon as you can fusion summon one of those two monsters, do it. And pardon me. Oh, sorry, I had a lump in my throat. The reason for this is both Ojama Knight and Ojama King can make some of your opponent's monster card zones unusable, which drastically limits the number of monsters that Bastion can play. Now, it's not so much that you really have to worry about the strength of Bastion's monsters. Really none of them that I've seen. Well, no, there is one that could be a problem, but if you manage to lock off his field, you won't have to worry about it. But for the most part, most of his monsters can't get above about 2,000 attack points. So having a Knight in defense mode will be more than enough to protect you, and having a King in defense mode is definitely going to protect you, because I know for a fact there's nothing in his deck that can beat Ojama King, at least in terms of defense stats. I will get into specifically why you want to lock off some of his monster card zones once we get into the duel. But additionally, you will want to combine them with Ojama Country, which flips the attack and defense of all monsters on the field so long as you control a face-up Ojama monster. So that would basically make Ojama King a 3,000 attack, 0 defense instead of a 0 attack, 3,000 defense, and so on for everything else. Ojama Country will provide you with the necessary attack power so that you can do the typical Gravekeeper's Vassal, Secret Pass to the Treasures, double Union attack thing. That will let you do over 10,000 damage to Bastion, and again, Vassal's effect makes all of its battle damage treated as effect damage, so that gets you another bonus. So the super rares of Union attack are pretty much required. You don't technically need two. If you want to win, all you really need is one, because that will put Vassal over 5,000 attack points. That will still be more than enough to knock Bastion out. You just won't get quite as many points for it as if you had gotten him to over 10,000. The polymerizations as well, you don't technically need 3. 3 is recommended just to make it easier to draw one. And additionally, there's plenty of ways you can get polymerizations. I know they're in a few, like one of the starter decks. I don't remember which one. Some characters have one in their starting deck. Some get them by level up. And they're also in the regular inventory at the card trader for like 3,000 gold, 3 super rare jewels, and like a bunch of spellstones. So if you have any saved up, you can trade for additional polymerizations there. There's plenty of ways to get them, but again, you don't technically need 3, especially because there are some skills that you can use to make up for that. So, for example, I'm using Aster Phoenix, and he has this Master of Fusion skill that says anytime your life points decrease by 1,800, instead of conducting your normal draw, you can just add a polymerization to your hand from outside of your deck. So if you are missing copies and you can't get your hands on any more, you can use a skill like this, or Jaden's Fusion Time skill, which is effectively the same thing. It's just you can activate that when you lose 1,500 instead of 1,800. And these will get you additional polymerizations for you to use. And what's more is that Master of Fusion and Fusion Time are both level up rewards for their respective characters. And I'm pretty sure that you get that they unlock at level 13 for both Jaden and Aster, I think, but I know for a fact that they are level up skills. So again, if you're short on polymerizations, pick one, level them up a few times, and you should very easily get your hands on the necessary skill. Aside from that, you will need plenty of Ojamas to make the Ojama fusions. I'm doing 2 blacks, 2 greens, and 2 yellows specifically so that it's a little bit easier to create King, just because King specifically says that it needs one of each of these 3, whereas Knight just wants 1 Ojama plus 1 Ojama, it doesn't care. There's some Jar of Greeds to speed up the drawing power of this deck, and then we get to the other rare cards. So first off is King of the Swamp. This card can function as both Fusion Substitute, so you can use this in place of any of the Ojamas for King. However, you have to have the other 2. So for example, you could do Ojama Black, Ojama Green, and King of the Swamp, but you couldn't do Ojama Black, and King of the Swamp. You have to meet all the other criteria to count this thing as a substitute. Alternatively, you can also just discard King of the Swamp to draw a polymerization out of your deck. And that's primarily why King of the Swamp is here, is because it does fill 2 different roles at the same time. It can be Fusion Substitute to help you create a fusion monster, but there are other fusion substitute monsters out there, such as Goddess with the Third Eye, or Beast King of the Swamps, or anything like that. And there is also a spell card that helps you find polymerization called Fusion Sage. However, just to be warned, Fusion Sage is another ultra rare card, so just there is that. But again, King of the Swamp is here just because it kind of can do both at once, and you don't have to worry about bulking up your deck and adding extra draw power to try and burn through it all. And then lastly, we come to this thing, Ojama Blue. And much like King of the Swamps, Ojama Blue fills 2 roles at the same time. For one, when this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can add 2 Ojama cards from your deck to your hand. Now, that could be 2 different Ojama monsters, for example, or it could be an Ojama monster and the field spell that you need to swap the attack and defense and get the whole combo rolling. So, Blue is here to help you search out both material to use for the fusions, as well as the necessary field spell to get this whole strategy going. But it is a super rare, and I did check earlier, you can only get 1 copy of this by leveling Chaz up. If you want any more, you do have to get him to drop them in duels. But, much like King of the Swamp, there are alternatives you can use instead. For example, there's a monster in the game called Raimei. I'll just look it up really quick just because I can't quite remember. Okay, everyone, I apologize if there's a little bit of a weird cut or edit or something right there. Silly old me, when I went typing the name of the Raimei card into the text search, I totally spaced the fact that the dash button is the shortcut to stop recording. So, once I pushed it, the episode stopped recording. And because I didn't realize that, I went on to explain the entire rest of the deck, as well as the alternate cards, all of Bastion's reward cards, as well as a beautifully successful farm against him, except none of it recorded. Because I was dumb and didn't realize that I pushed the stop recording button. So, we're going to be picking up where we left off. I apologize if my voice sounds a bit hoarse, but like I mentioned, I literally just finished recording this entire episode, or so I thought. So, as I believe I was mentioning, if you do not have 3 copies of Ojama Blue, a good substitute is this Raimei card, and in fact, now that I'm paranoid, okay, it is recording. I'm going to be checking out all night now. Basically, Raimei, when it is destroyed in battle and sent to the graveyard, you can add a level 2 or lower light monster from your deck to your hand. All of the Ojamas in your main deck are going to be level 2 or lower, and they are all lights for some reason, so Raimei will let you search out any one that you may need. The main downside is that Raimei will only let you get 1, whereas Ojama Blue will get you 2. And alternatively, if you want to go for looking for the field spell, there's this other monster in the game called Planet Pathfinder. You can just tribute this card, add a field spell card from your deck to your hand. It will take up a normal summon, but realistically you're not going to be normal summoning anything other than Ojama Blue or Gravekeeper's Vassal anyway, so you're not going to be playing Planet Pathfinder on the last turn of the game, because that's when you're going to be playing Vassal, and hopefully by that point your deck will be empty and you'll have Ojama Country. Anyway, so yeah, those are the two alternatives to Ojama Blue. So again, for as many SRs and for the one UR that are in this deck, there are alternatives for them. You technically don't even need the two Ojama Kings, really. They're just here as more options. You could have just Ojama, you could just fusion summon just Ojama Knights, and their combined attack power will still put Vassal over 10,000 for the win. So, you know, lots of rare cards, or several rare cards, but the only truly essential ones are going to be Polymerization and Union Attack, and realistically, you only need one of each. Well, technically you'd need two Polymerizations now that I think about it, just because you'd have to create two fusion monsters to dump power into Vassal, but regardless, you don't need as many as what are here. I just have them here for simplicity's sake. Now, with that said, I'm trying to remember what I discussed. An alternative strategy for this deck is to use it on somebody with the restart skill, because aside from that failed recording, I'm sorry, I'm just a little distracted because I think there's an owl outside the window that's continually hooting, and I don't know if it's getting picked up or not, but I can hear it through my headphones. If you do get a very bad starting hand, it is more than likely going to mean that your farming attempt is over and done with right there. It's very difficult to recover with this deck if you get off to a bad start. So, Restart will kind of offset this, but the reason I'm not showing this off with Restart is that nobody in the GX Duel world gets the Restart skill by level up. There are 4 options. Crowler, Ubel, Jaden, and Jesse can all get the Restart skill, but they all can only get them as a drop from dueling against a legendary duelist or in the PvP arena. And because Inglorious Bastion is a roaming duelist and not a true gateway duelist, you can only ever duel him in the GX Duel world. So anybody that gets it by level up elsewhere, like, for example, Bandit Keith, it's not going to help, because Inglorious Bastion is never going to show up in the regular duel world. So that's just a heads up to be concerned about with the Restart skill, if that's what you choose to use instead of Master of Fusion or Fusion Time. But regardless, let's go and read these very long monster effects for the second time. Now, his 2 normals are just normal monsters. They're really nothing that special to write home about. But interestingly, all of his rares and one of his super rares are cards that were previously only available as level up rewards for regular Bastion. And I find it interesting that Konami is starting to release cards that were previously locked off, like all of these, or the Harpy's Hunting Ground field spell is now available in the newest box, whereas before you could only get it with one of my skills. So it's interesting to see that after being locked off for so long, Konami is now starting to release these cards as well. But anyway. So first up is Polychemic Critter Hydreigon. It is an 8-star Dragon Gemini with 200 attack and 2800 defense. Once it has been normal summoned again, it gains the following effects. When another Gemini monster is normal summoned, you can make that monster gain 500 attack and defense. I have never actually experimented with this, but because I believe Gemini monsters, they still count as Gemini monsters even before their effects activate, I'm thinking that means that Hydreigon's effect will activate when you both first play the Gemini monster and then when you normal summon it again to give it an ability. So it's possible that it may give monsters a 1000 attack point boost, but I'm not super sure, so don't quote me on that. Additionally, Hydreigon also states that if a Gemini monster you control would be destroyed by a card effect, you can destroy one other card you control instead, so a very defensive Gemini monster, but very high level, so you will probably need to special summon it in some other means. And to help you with that, we have Chemicritter Carbo Crab. During your main phase, you can send one Gemini monster from your deck to the graveyard, then add one Gemini monster from your deck to your hand. You can only use the effect of Chemicritter Carbo Crab once per turn. So this combos very well with the Supervise equip spell, in that Carbo Crab can move your bigger Geminis into the graveyard, and you can then use Supervise's effect that says when it's sent from the field to the graveyard, special summon a Gemini in the graveyard. So that's one way around the high level requirement, or the high level cost of some of these things. Additionally, there is also Chemicritter Hydron Hawk. You can discard one card, then target one Gemini monster in your graveyard and special summon it in defense position. So Hydron Hawk is another way to get your Geminis out of the graveyard if you don't happen to have Supervises, which, by the way, if you're curious, I believe they are available at the card trader. The first of his super rares is also the last of his previous level up rewards. It is Polychemicritter Dioxogur. This is an 8-star Fiend Gemini with 2800 attack and 200 defense. The normal summon of a Gemini monster cannot be negated once this thing has its effects activated. And once per turn, you can banish a Gemini monster from your graveyard, then target one card your opponent controls and destroy it. So Dioxogur is a much more aggressive Gemini than Hydreigon is. Just letting you know. Now this one is actually a new card, Chemicritter Oxyox. 0 attack and 2100 defense. And during your main phase, you can special summon one Gemini monster from your hand, and if you do, all Gemini monsters you currently control become that monster's original level until the end of this turn. You can only use the effect of Oxyox once per turn. Now obviously, you're probably going to be using it more for the special summoning effect, just because there is no limit on what you can special summon. So you could, for example, special summon this thing out of your hand, you could special summon one of the other big Geminis out of your hand, anything you want. But I do also just want to make mention that because Oxyox does have a level manipulating effect, you might also be able to find some way of working that into synchro summoning. So, for example, off the top of my head, you could use Oxyox's effect to special summon the Tuner Gemini. I think it's called Toon Magician. Toon Magician is level 4, so Oxyox would become level 4. You could then normal summon Toon Magician to make it a tuner, combine the two for a level 8 synchro monster. That's just one option. There's plenty of things you could probably do. But again, you will probably be using it more for the special summoning effect than for synchro summoning. Now for a non-Gemini, we have Red Ogre, a level 7 zombie with 2800 attack and 2100 defense. Very interesting effect as well. When this card is normal summoned, you can send any number of cards from your hand to the graveyard, then target the same number of cards on the field and return those targets to the hand. So you can only ever use the effect once, but it can help you clear out your opponent's back row so that you can hopefully deliver a very powerful, possibly game-finishing blow. But just be forewarned that Red Ogre's effect only works if it's normal summoned. If you special summon this thing, you're not going to be able to use it. Its effect, at least. Next, we have Goblin Elite Attack Force, a level 4 Fiend with 2200 attack and 1500 defense. And if this card attacks, it is changed to defense position at the end of the battle phase, and its battle position cannot be changed until the end of your next turn. Now, important thing to note is that unlike the other Goblin Forces cards, like Goblin Recon Squad, I think is one, for example, all of those can have their battle positions changed with card effects. Elite Attack Force cannot. Once it is put into defense mode with its own effect, it is stuck in that mode for your entire next turn. There's just no way around it. So just be forewarned, have something in place to help protect it while it's stuck in defense mode, and you're also only going to be able to attack with it once every other turn. And finally, his only ultra rare is this thing called Shutendoji. It is a 4-star zombie with 1500 attack and 800 defense. And once per turn, you can activate one of the following effects. You can either banish 2 zombie-type monsters from your graveyard to draw a card, or target one of your banished zombie-type monsters, and place that target on the top of your deck. So, a little bit of draw power, a little bit of recycling. Interesting little zombie, but very low stats, so again, be careful with using it. Pardon me. I'm sorry, but again, like I mentioned, I already recorded all of this, and having to redo it again right after I recorded it, because luckily Bastion respawned pretty quick at level 40 again. This is starting to hurt my throat a little bit, but I'm going to power through so that you guys can hopefully see successful farming. Sorry for that kind of long pause. I was also just double checking to make sure that the recording was still going. Please, please, please give me just as good of a farm. Okay, I'm going second again. I can deal with that. Please, please don't be a pretend. I can work with that. That is perfect. That is almost as good as the hand that I got previously. In fact, that's pretty much identical to the hand that I got previously, because the ending effect is going to be the exact same. And he's actually showing off some cards. Good. Okay. Lots of things are happening at once, so I'm just going to go ahead and show the strategy of this deck right away. So, you'll want to play Ojama Country. It's not required necessarily that you need this thing in your starting hand, because the defense of the fusion Ojamas will be enough to keep Bastion at bay for a little bit, but I'm just going to play it anyway. I'm going to activate Polymerization, Fusion Summon, and Ojama Knight by combining the two Ojama Yellows. Summon it in attack mode, because Ojama Country is going to flip the attack and defense of the monsters on the field that I control in Ojama. And then I'm going to lock off his other two monster card zones so he cannot do anything. And at this point, unless this Kasha card has another effect that I'm not familiar with, there's nothing Bastion can do to stop you. Once you're in a state like this, he is stuck for forever. There's nothing he can do, and you're pretty much good to go. Now, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and discuss exactly what's going on, and that why it is so important to lock off two of his monster card zones. Because I actually wasn't paying attention, and he went through his first turn really quick, and he actually summoned this thing really, really fast. This thing is why you want to lock off two of his monster card zones. Cannot be normal summoned set, must be special summoned from your hand by controlling two or more zombie type monsters, and cannot be special summoned by other means. When this card is special summoned, shuffle all other monsters on the field into the deck. And if you do, this card's attack becomes 1000 times the number of face-up zombie type monsters shuffled into the deck this way. It's that shuffling into the deck effect that is very, very frustrating to deal with. This thing has ruined me whenever I was trying to duel him normally before I found a farming deck. Just because the rest of Bastion's deck is very good at just getting two zombies in play just like at a moment's notice. He has Gozuki to put zombies into his graveyard, and then he also has this Mizuki thing which says that you can banish it from your graveyard and then just special summon any other zombie out of the graveyard. So there's been times where he's used a Gozuki to put a Mezuki in the graveyard, and then immediately used Mezuki to summon something else out of the graveyard, then shuffled those two back into the deck to summon the Kasha. So it's mostly just that this thing can come out of flippin' nowhere at a moment's notice, and if he ever special summons it, all your monsters are gone. So that's why it's important to lock off his monster card zones as fast as you can, because in a situation like this, there's no way he can play a second zombie and then special summon another Kasha to shuffle everything else back into the deck and get a chance to attack me. Likewise, if he just had a Mizuki in play, like he did on the failed recording, lock off the two monster card zones, can't summon another zombie, don't have to worry about it. So that's why I like the strategy of this deck, is because it completely blocks off this very, very annoying card that he can play. Again, at a moment's notice. Aside from that, Oh, you're also probably wondering why Kasha's attack and defense weren't flipped around. It's just I just at the desk. It's just the way that this effect is worded. It says the attack becomes 1,000 times the number of face-up monsters. It's just the way that that's worded means that no matter what, it's always going to be equal to this. So Kasha isn't actually affected by Ojama Country, but it doesn't matter because both of the Ojama fusions are strong enough to keep this thing at bay. Like, unless you just randomly put some zombies in this deck, you're never going to have to worry about like a 3,000 attack point Kasha. I'm not actually going to throw down another blue so that he will attack it and help me draw some more. But the other nice thing about the strategy of this Ojama deck is that it also blocks off the other powerful card in Inglorious Bastion's deck, which is actually that red ogre card that he can drop. Yeah, he does have that red ogre in his deck, and again, because his deck is very good at getting 2 monsters in play through special summoning, you know, whether it's using Mizuki's effects, using Gozuki's effects, whatever, Samurai Skull, again, he's got plenty of cards that are really good at manipulating zombies. He can normal summon Red Ogre pretty easily, and then, you know, kick something like your Ojama Country back to your hand, kick your back row back into your hand, whatever. So, it's nice to have a strategy that means that you don't have to worry about any of the powerful cards in his deck. And obviously that's what any farming strategy kind of strives for, but it's just, especially in this case, you don't have to worry about either one just coming out of nowhere and ruining your strategy while you're still setting things up. Like, for example, with the Unhappy Girl, unless you manage to freeze 3 zombies in place, you still have to worry about Kasha, and even if you freeze 3 zombies in place, he can just normal summon a Red Ogre, send your Unhappy Girls back to your hand. So it's just, it's that kind of thing of like, this just seems like a really good strategy to counter Inglorious Bastion, even if you do have to rely on getting a very good opening hand. But regardless, I'm just going to stop talking about it. I'm going to go ahead and use the other effect of Ojama Country that says I can send 1 Ojama card from my hand to the graveyard, and special summon an Ojama in the graveyard back onto the field. I'm specifically going to summon a yellow, so that I can then use Polymerization, create Ojama King, just making sure that I pick the glossy one. So I can fuse the yellow in my hand with a green and a black, or yellow on the field with a green and a black in my hand. Create Ojama King. Again, put it in attack mode because Ojama Country flips the stats. And again, there's nothing Bastion can do. I'm not going to attack the Kasha just because, again, he has Gozuki's in his deck. So it's possible he may put one out and then start using its effect to put zombies into the graveyard and start milling through his own deck. Very unlikely that he would catch up to me at this point, considering I'm like 7 cards ahead of him. But I just, there's no reason to prod the AI at this point. Like I mentioned, it's completely locked down. He can't do anything. And all I have to do is just draw my last 2 cards and then do the typical Vassal finish for the win. Okay, there's the Vassals. Speaking of, let's go ahead and just toss the Polymerization because I don't need it. And King of the Swamp. Alright. Now, we just play the Vassal, play the Secret Pass, the 2 Union attacks. And that actually reminds me, when it comes to the spell and traps that Bastion has at his disposal, I haven't really noticed anything that obnoxious in terms of, like, messing with your monsters, really. But there is a trap he has called, like, Haunted Shrine, I think. And that's also something he can use to special summon zombies. Basically, if he has no... It's something like, if he has no monsters in play, he can activate this to special summon a zombie from his graveyard. And likewise, if he has no monsters in play, he can banish it from his graveyard to special summon a zombie from his graveyard. So, you know, it's... He could activate it, special summon a zombie, normal summon a zombie, and then special summon Kasha because he now has met the requirements. So that's been the most noticeable spell and trap card. He also has that Foolish Burial, which puts, which also helps put his monsters into the graveyard. So just, his deck is very good at giving him the opportunity to summon either Kasha or Red Ogre. So again, like I've said several times now, that's why I like this Ojama strategy, because it completely blocks him off from doing either. But yeah, so very glad we got an equally beautiful farming attempt. And like I was mentioning before, I'm actually salvaging what I can out of the previous recording, so like I mentioned, there's just going to be a weird edit while I was covering the deck, but like I mentioned before, I think I did have a little bit of bad luck with this deck for a while. I kept getting brick starting hands, but in reality it was only like 3 failures compared to like what was like 8 successful farms in a row, or 9 successful farms in a row. Like, this Ojama deck really is good. It's just, for 3 times in a row, I just got really unlucky. But regardless, that was all of his Inglorious Bastion's reward cards. That was a method of farming, and I'm racking my brain to see if I can remember anything else. Nope. So he's going to be hanging around for another 3-4 days, so best of luck with your farming attempts. And thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all had a great time, and I hope you all have a great day. And I will see you all next time.